with it, its memory too. The pattern itself has a religious meaning. This not only leads to various energy transmissions, but also to a reassembling of the water structure. It's safe to say that faults in the water, such as those that cause cancerous effects in the human body, for instance, are thus eradicated. Most physicists would be astounded by this. Nevertheless, it is possible to measure this phenomenon. An electric charge takes place in the water, and it comes from the cosmos, says Kashiski. So, are we dealing with physics, or magic, or alchemy? The concepts of magic or alchemy are quite relative. On closer consideration, alchemy is also chemistry. I think the closer we get to water, the more we will find out about ourselves too. Whatever there is to it, the Russians have taken up the scent and hope one day to be able to broaden the laws of physics. My views on water have changed radically, and I'm certain that everyone else will change theirs also in the very near future. In the course of our research, it has become clear that we were quite simply unable to solve many of the mysteries involved, particularly those relating to the physical aspect of water. Magic and science. One of the great achievements of the modern world was the ability to clearly separate these concepts one from the other. The Tribunal for Arbitrating Disputes is now based in London, in the editorial offices of the magazine Nature, the High Court of Natural Sciences. What Nature publishes is deemed recognized, and he who is quoted in Nature is earmarked for a brilliant career. He who is rejected, however, or exposed by Editor-in-Chief Philip Campbell and his jury, might just as well say goodbye to the title of scientist. The memory of water and cosmic energy are taboo in these hallowed rooms. Verdicts are reached soberly and without emotion.
Whether scientists are known or unknown is irrelevant, but when a claim is unusual or extraordinary, we would take a special effort to make sure that the referees give it very careful scrutiny. And sometimes the referees have said the only way we can judge this result is for us or somebody else also to do the experiment before you decide whether to publish it. And on occasion, recently that did happen. The referees suggested to us that we should do that, and we offered to do that with the authors, and they refused, so we didn't publish the paper.
But even nature can be wrong. In the 60s, the discovery of polywater kept the world on tenterhooks. A Soviet physicist discovered that in tubes partly filled with water, another new fluid would accumulate in a matter of days. Nature duly published the news. This new water was denser and tougher than normal water and froze only at -30 degrees centigrade, on top of which it appeared to possess a kind of memory. A worldwide polywater hysteria broke out. A year later, the dream was at an end. The water miracle was due to nothing but pollution, which no one had noticed until then. Altogether, 400 researchers had been led up the garden path. Could anything like it ever happen again?
Very hard to say, because people have learnt from that and from other experiences to be very cautious. But it's not clear that what happened was bad in polywater. What happened was a scientist, as far as I'm aware, made a claim based in perfectly good faith, and other scientists found it extremely interesting and made genuine claims which, on the face of it, were indeed interesting. What did happen, I think, which was perhaps questionable, was that the community wasn't sufficiently critical, so those claims went on for too long. Some people could have looked more carefully at what was being claimed doing particular experiments more quickly than they were done, and the story could have been disproved scientifically.
However regulated by stringent laws the structure of natural sciences may be, it is very often single persons who upset the apple cart, as in the case of a 72-year-old Tyrolean who left school at an early age, but who nevertheless is responsible for an invention that defies the laws of physics and all those who question it. The man's name is Johann Grander, and his invention is the so-called revitalized water. Here we see him being decorated by the Republic of Austria for his services to science, and prior to this, much the same honor was bestowed on him by the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences. The reason for all these honors is Grander's much disputed invention, an appliance for the production of revitalized water that he successfully exports all over the world. After many long and arid years, Grander is now gaining recognition. And should this not be a case of gigantic mass suggestion, it can only mean one thing, that it is not a swindle, and the jubilation is a perfectly legitimate accolade. What exactly do Johann Grander's water revitalizers do? They ensure, for instance, that the water in a swimming pool meets the standard hygienic requirements, even when only a part of the prescribed amount of chlorine has been dissolved in it. So, less chlorine and yet adequate antibacterial protection. Here we have the mains. The old pipe comes down here and leads to the individual taps. We interrupted the circuit here and introduced the activating unit like a bypass. The water flows in here, passes through the unit, and then re-enters the old pipe again quite normally, just as it did before. Nothing has been added, nothing taken away. What actually happens inside this box is poppycock from a scientific point of view, and it's Grander's secret anyway.
The magnet holt die Energie und gibt's weiter an.
The magnet attracts the energy and passes it on to the water. I never studied, so I always watched things and was allowed to notice it.
Da habe ich halt immer wieder beobachtet und so habe ich draufkommen dürfen.
Grander water has many different effects. Take, for instance, the Knoll Bakery in Bremen that delivers wholemeal products to 150 health food shops. According to the customers, the rolls made with Grander water stay fresh longer and are a good deal tastier too. Nobody feels they've had the wool pulled over their eyes by a dubious invention here. I had my doubts to begin with. You can't see anything, you can't hear anything, and you can't smell anything. So all right, we tried it out, and right away we noticed that something had changed in the water, an improvement in various ways. One thing that is calculable in production is the relation of water to flour. Ever since revitalized water has been flowing here, more of it is used in baking. In other words, the same amount of flour as usual, but more dough, and for this reason the bread dries out less quickly than it used to. An additional advantage for the bakery is that since it hooked up the Grander appliance to its taps, it needs approximately a third less washing up liquid, quite apart from smaller but no less welcome side effects.
Mir schmeckt der Kaffee besser.
The coffee tastes better to me, and that's an important point for us bakers because we work mainly at night. It's not so bitter. Revitalized water is also used in the production of synthetic fibers, in factory cooling systems. The cooling must be constant, otherwise the quality suffers. Up till now, chemicals were necessary to fight slime, mold, algae, and calcium. Ever since a water revitalizer has been installed in the system, however, The cooling water has been free of algae and bacteria, and one can dispense with chemicals altogether. I'll admit that I was skeptical at first, thought the whole thing was some new age gimmick, but it was soon obvious that the quality of the cooling water was improving constantly with the new system. As a technician, I'm at a loss to explain it. Our readings showed good quality, to be sure, but for the moment, we can't explain why the water quality has become so consistent. When it comes to money, few firms are prepared to joke, and the Casino Austria gambling halls are no exception. And yet the branch in Felden employs a water revitalizer in its air conditioning unit. The reason being that the employees complained of dry eyes and throat inflammations. Since the cooling system has been filtered through a revitalizer, one can dispense with chemicals and no one moans about bad air anymore. As expected, it pays off. We've saved money. Our calculations tell us that we'll have recouped the Granda outlay within 3 years. Since faith in the law generally has little chance when pitted against profit, one thing is certain. Mr. Granda's revitalized water appliances work, even if science is unable to explain why. It's a fact that shouldn't be considered reprehensible, for all the laws of physics are only models after all. As Albert Einstein once wrote, the most beautiful and deepest experience a man can have is the sense of the mysterious. It is the underlying principle of religion, as well as all serious endeavor in art and science. He who never had this experience seems to me, if not dead, then at least blind. Water is intelligent. It's enormous, much more than the air. No one has ever researched that because it's like I say. Those who have no money, or not much, they try something out. And those who have a lot of money, the scientists, they research something, and it's much the same.
You can only be a scientist if you act in a scientific manner. I think there are well-established ways of doing science. So even if you're questioning orthodox ideas, nevertheless you do have to do science in a way that other people can do, and that does stand up to tests of the standards of measurement. So, for example, if you make a measurement, you have to report the accuracy of that measurement. And a lot of reports that make outrageous claims that subsequently get discredited don't follow those rules. If you look carefully at the measurements, you find that they're making extraordinary claims for the accuracy of the measurements. So that's an indicator sometimes that there's something wrong.
This man would never tolerate being accused of working unscientifically, and yet Vladimir Konstantinovich Kondratov, a doyen of Russian physicists, is the only man yet to have offered a daring explanation for the peculiar effects of Granda's water. He assumes that water possesses structures that can be altered. These structures are able to absorb the sun's energy and cosmic rays as well. When water is treated by Granda's technology, the structures get larger. They grow. And these chair-like structures also enlarge vertically. And because they enlarge, they are also able to load more energy from the sun and the cosmos. You understand, the bigger the packages, the more energy can be drawn from the sun and the cosmos and distributed to the environment. And here again, the concept cosmos